It just means, can you realize that you are more than this earth experience? That's all there is to it. When real people unblock the channels that have been clogged up by this world, one can feel they're much more than just this place. Our adversary has frozen over our pineal gland, fluorided our mind, and filled your chakras with sludge from the New York City sewer system. Who were you before birth? And what will you be after death? Isn't that the same thing? No, not necessarily. Can a butterfly go back to being a caterpillar as easily as Bruce can flip-flop his gender before the Kardashians moil? What part of you is timeless and not here? Is that aspect of us inside the body, or does it reside somewhere else? What is the brain's role in connecting these parts? An atheist would think these questions absurd, but what does your inner knowing tell you? Real people can sense that we're here for a reason and part of something larger. How do I transition from the caterpillar to the spiritual butterfly, and what tools are here on earth to assist me in this process? In doing that, the game here doesn't really seem fair. The dark element here, trying to block me, knows exactly what it's doing. Its techniques have been perfected over a millennia, but you and I start with no instruction manual at all. Is this transformation something I can do on Earth in one lifetime, or is Earth just part of a very long process? We don't know these details, but we can see how hard society works to block our own metamorphosis. That's the best news of all time to us, because the harder it works, the more it is revealed that we're getting close. When the turtle was about to cross the finish line, the rabbit was no longer sleeping. We see that this world is out to screw over the caterpillar so it never transforms. The modern world seems to welcome all kinds of transitions, if you see what I mean, but blocks the only one that's important, the spiritual metamorphosis. Transitioning to, say, another gender is pointless, and it wants us occupied with that sort of thing. That's just two sides of the same meat coin. What is so celebrated today via woke movements is just a caterpillar who goes into the cocoon and emerges as another caterpillar, but this one has magenta highlights. That's not a spiritual voyage. That's shit. Regarding the only journey that matters here, what does this world offer us? Rolling out a 5G, then a 6G, then a 7G network around the world when no one asked for it is not important to the human experience. Merck and Pfizer developing a new drug that cures nothing but causes a long list of disgusting side effects mentioned in detail on TV commercials shown at your dinner time is not important. A new body wash for men portrayed in bizarre Old Spice commercials is not important. iPhone 666 is not important. We 21st century dummies have been led to believe that wonderful wins that this modern society serves up to us through its tech and its products are a big deal. They are not a big deal. They are shit. What this society presents as wonderful is actually a grapefruit-flavored dildo. Understanding what you truly are beyond the body is all that is important in this life, and then fostering what it wants, using the tools that this life affords. Incorporeal self must be in balance here with the physical self. Our adversary is out to tip the balance in its favor. Tech is a tool it uses, which helps to hide the highest truth from real people. What? Matt, isn't tech just out to make our lives easier? No, it's what I just said. Tech is actually here as its primary tool to hide spiritual truth. It's its primary tool at this moment in history. Tech is bait that draws people closer, or in some cases back, to the material world. It will use all at its disposal to pull on that side of the rope in our spiritual tug of war. What do things like the news, academia, and government focus on? They push to the top of the mountain all the unimportant crap, like Super Bowl winners, new download speeds, and AI large language models. What does, quote, the news and academia tell you about the timeless part of you? Squat. Nothing. That's not even discussed. It pretends the other side of us doesn't even exist. The dark part of reality's intentions are revealed because its society goes out of its way to hide those aspects from us. Even the possibilities of spiritual self are rarely ever pondered in the modern society and what it presents. A few times a year, anything related to soul or spirit is finally the focus of something. Number one, it's almost always trivial folly, like the movie Ghost with that wretched Whoopi Goldberg, or the Disney movie Soul that presents like these things called Jerrys residing over souls before they go to Earth. That's confused the shit out of little kids. So it's folly, or number two, if it is presented, it's exclusively focused on what may exist after death. Before birth is never mentioned, but before birth, to me, is just as important. But it's absolutely never mentioned anywhere. If we knew what we were before birth, that would tell us quite a bit. Almost no one stops to think about their existence before birth. Like those 40 trillion years or whatever it was means nothing before we came and was put into a crib and we started pooping in our diapers. All that time or whatever we were, that doesn't matter. Nobody thinks about it for even a second. I like what the YouTube series Interface says in this regard, though. It says, most lost souls remain on Earth. They failed to go as they came. They failed to go per the route that they came here on. It makes sense to me that the road out could be the way we got in. If some glowing, beautiful white light appears before me, whether it's a trick or a trap or whatever, I'm going to try to find out, is that how I got here? If that's how I got here, then I'm interested in it. I like that advice. I'm just going to put that one in my pocket. Quick side discussion. I have a beef with most spiritual gurus and spiritual teachers on the internet. I've listened to a portion of 150 or more interviews from all types of people that fit this mold. Most of these people are these shiny, happy, boot at the gas pump interviewee types. Shiny, happy people laugh. It's those types. They're nice people. They're missing a big part. I would estimate that 95% of them do not acknowledge what we in our group clearly see, that we have a spiritual adversary here that is our opponent, and part of it is reality itself. As smart as these people are, they rarely mention anything that we've looked at over the years. They'll rarely mention what we call the 7-Eleven job application, the big day in 2001. They don't mention World War I, World War II, Civil War. They don't mention all these wars cooked up by the same group of assholes. They don't mention the NASA puppet shows. They don't mention anything that we've called cake in a lake over the years. Do they see the dark part that we see? Because they never mention it. Well, why not? Isn't that a component that must be kept on the table if you're going to make a presentation about how reality works? Do these spiritual gurus just, like regarding the Supreme Court, they just believe it's just 9 good people trying to do the best they can for people? Do they think presidential candidates winning Iowa and then winning New Hampshire is a springboard to the Oval Office? Do they believe in these systems and these presentations? I don't know, because they don't talk about it. What a bunch of bullshit we would say about all that crap. We now understand that just calling out the evil, which is what the first grade truther does, just calling out and pointing at the evil is not good enough either. Most of our community dials up fear videos and blame the secret societies. That's not exactly enlightenment either. But these friendly spiritual gurus are on the other end of the spectrum. They avoid the dark topics for some reason. I appreciate talks about real people being bound together in some way through source consciousness and original awareness and all sharing in this, and we were split into the experience that we know of as the individual. I love that talk. I like the big thinking and agree with most of it. But these hippies rarely say a damn thing about the dark side that has been maybe too much of our focus. Nevertheless, it's a component that can't be ignored. How can a person even attempt to take a shot at explaining reality without painting a picture that incorporates both the individual journey and the screen trying to distract us from that journey? How is it not painfully obvious to these hippies how artificial the entire society is, crafted specifically to fulfill its aims in being our spiritual spike strips? Yeah, we're the A-Team black van, and it's laying down spiritual spike strips. You're B.A. Baracus. One thing I know you and I have in common is we both see the dark component. We've focused on it probably too much over the years, but it can't be ignored. Our explanation of what it is varies, but we all see it. Very few spiritual gurus will ever mention it, and few have incorporated it into their understanding of reality. That means they're about as useless as Schopenhauer. In the world today, what group of people are most connected to the ancient civilizations of the past that we've been talking about? Of course, it's what we call tribal people. Native Americans, indigenous people, First Nations peoples, Aborigines, Indians by some definitions, and village people. No, not the village people. I mean people that still reside in small villages, far away from the big cities. These people aren't gay. These people know something about their transcendental self that the modern dummy does not. These people are called primitive by the man eating the egg sandwich that we met in Chapter 1. His definition of primitive is solely based on the tech that he carries in his pocket, radiating his balls with 5G wavelengths from dusk to dawn. This reality presents repeating themes that most people don't notice. Do you think it's a coincidence that throughout all of history, every single race of indigenous people has been killed off by the, quote, colonial powers of the West? Could what have happened to them be random when history says all of these people play out a similar history in the same way every single time? The story of the Trail of Tears in the United States has been repeated 1,000 times over across all continents over a millennia. The Aborigines of Australia have their own sad story that's a bit different than the American Indians. Britain addicted a third of China to opium and took over India. The Rothschild family sent Cecil Rhodes to South Africa and soon after monopolized diamonds for 100 years. The side effect of that particular Cecil Rhodes endeavor into Africa? Tell them what they've won, Johnny. They've been awarded the beautiful and glamorous blank government. Certain things in the book cannot be said. Blank government. Yes, these heroes of the West, like Cecil Rhodes, certainly deserve their knighthoods, their OBs, their CBs, and their bronze busts. Big bronze busts to their heads in Hyde Park in Kensington Gardens. I guarantee there's a gaggle of pigeons right now pooping on that bus head. Of course, whatever ancient customs African natives held before being brought to North America as slaves was likely stamped out and destroyed as well. When the U.S. realized what they had with Hawaii, guess what happened to poor Princess Katialani? Oh no, here comes that United States again. They're going to take it. It was modern times, though, so they had to be a bit more gentle and simply annex the land known as Hawaii into and back through the corporation. They couldn't just stick their Magellans and their Ponce de Leons on them. Looking back through time, we have a repeating story of the famous explorers and the associated locals that they killed off. Indigenous people have ancient roots, and they know something, in my opinion, about spiritual matters. The man with the egg sandwich does not. They don't base their entire existence off the trinkets that this place doles out and its petty and pathetic rewards. Did you see the movie The Right Stuff, where they sent Dennis Quaid down to Australia because he's going to communicate in Australia to whoever's going to fly overhead, and the Aborigine man comes up and he explains he's going to my friend's going to fly overhead, and the Aborigine guy's like, "You do that too?" He's like, "What? No, not me, man. not me, man. The guy up on the rock there, the elder up on the rock. He know the moon, he know the star, he know the Milky Way. He'll help you fake astronauts out." That was the only truth in the entire movie other than the last 5 minutes when Chuck Yeager crashes his plane because he can't fly any further up into the firmament. That's what we call a truth drop, people. Just like Dennis Quaid, that Elon Musk cartoon character isn't going to Mars or anywhere else either. But we're talking about the ancient civilizations. That's how we got sidetracked here. Regarding the Aboriginal elder in The Right Stuff going out of body. He said, "You do that too?" He travels through the Milky Way, etc. Astral travel. That's things I can't do, but I believe a lot of tribal people or elders potentially can still do that sort of thing today. And when Dennis Quaid said to him that his friend was going to fly over, the Aboriginal man thought that he did the same sort of astral travel. And he could also move non-corporeally through the astral or ether or whatever these planes are. What a letdown it would have been when the Aborigines realized that Dennis Quaid was talking about a fake plastic Tonka toy and bogus missions named after Greek and Roman gods. Nobody's going anywhere in that sort of shit unless it's a ride on the Wildwood Boardwalk. Per the next segment, if anybody wants to take this as a business idea, you're more than welcome to it. But Hasbro or Mattel should have made a fun match game. years ago, featuring history's colonial powers as the central theme of moving around the game board. On the left, the game can list out all the famous explorers. You could choose who you want to be. List them all out. Christopher Columbus, Cortez, Ponce de Leon, Magellan, Rocky Balboa, Da Gama, all. Just list them all. And on the right side of the board, players can match them up, the explorers to the indigenous peoples that were raped and murdered. You have to match them up. The tribes range from the ones that everybody knows on the right side, Mayas, Incas, Aztecs, right down to the groups almost nobody knows, like the Arawaks. The Arawaks, some call Arawak Indians, were the original indigenous people of many Caribbean island nations like Jamaica, and they were not black-skinned. Peter Stuyvesant fought battles on many of these islands before coming to New York to screw over the natives of that region. That's how Peter got his peg leg, from a cannonball in a battle on one of these island nations. It's not a joke. Peter Stuyvesant High School in Lower Manhattan even adopted the name Peg Leg for their school mascot. Talk about a strange expression of school spirit. That high school mascot and the mental image that's associated with it doesn't make for the most intimidating track team. The Western or European powers killing off indigenous people is such a repeating theme, our children come to believe that such behavior is completely normal, and that's just how the world works. As a kid, I played cowboys and Indians. One kid I grew up with had a cap gun, and when the hammer came down on the tiny ball of gunpowder, it made a large crack. Nobody wanted to be the Indians, though, in this game, because they always got rounded up and abused in our neighborhood, just like they did in real life. The story of Aboriginals and natives around the world is so repetitive over such a long period of time that their general plight reveals that something very strange is going on here. Anyone with a degree of common sense can realize that there must be many things conveniently left out of our history books in school. Really think about this for a minute. There is not one indigenous population, at least that I know about, anywhere in the world over a certain period of time, going back about 1,000 years, that has not been screwed over by the colonial West. Not a one. So much for the peace pipe. An offer of truce from your king? I remember the notion of Longshanks' peace. I remember when the colonial ships from Portugal arrived, these bloodthirsty bastards. Mr. Author, this is nuts. Are you actually saying these groups of people were targeted, enslaved, and murdered because they carried some sort of spiritual knowledge that something was trying to stamp out? Are you saying that tribal people were put into the literal crosshairs because they had the chance of seeing through the lies of those who were currently in charge? Yeah, of course that's what I'm saying. Are you retarded? It's obvious at this point. The script is too repetitive. What is it? You think it's just a coincidence? Are you retarded, sir? You see, when every single indigenous group has been killed off by the West for 500 to 1,000 years, one has the duty to see why it's happening over and over again and why the same script is repeating beyond what the bogus history books will tell you. The proof of what I'm saying here shows up on both sides. It's how spiritually dumb, quote, modern man is, combined with the repeating tragic story regarding Indian indigenous peoples that we've been looking at. You have to look at both. There's a repeating story. What happened to this group? Fucked them over. What happened to this group? Screwed them over. Then you look at what, quote, modern man with the egg sandwich is. See, it all makes sense if you look at it as a whole. Modern man is a spiritual slug, which means that this thing, our adversary, was successful in what it hid from those participating in modern society, at least most of us. Today's culture is out to destroy every trace of our incorporeal selves. That just means the part of us that is not of the flesh. Our spiritual trail, at least in the West, has been covered over, so there is nothing for most people to follow anymore. These explorers of the West of yesteryear were serving our spiritual adversary without a conscious understanding of what they were doing, in my opinion. It simply made sense to these people why the indigenous tribes had to be fought and killed off, I guess. It's not much different than that scene in the movie Kingdom of Heaven, where the Templars, under the command of Guy de Châtillon, they're looking for excuses to attack the Muslim caravan. Any BS excuse will work. Their bishop rides up, or their religious leader that rides with them, and simply says, "God wills it! God wills it!" That's all they need. God wills it, and off they go to bathe their swords in blood. I'm sure most of these, quote, explorers justified all the death as a religious battle of sorts, too. Once again, the specific details about any particular conflict between a colonial power and an indigenous group is irrelevant. All I ask is for you to step back and notice how strange the repeating narratives are. It's the same plot line every single time for about 1,000 years. If you want to, keep believing it's just a coincidence that every tribal group became a target in some way and every single European explorer just happened to be out for blood. To the man on the street, it all seems kind of normal that indigenous peoples were running from the West century after century. It's not just about the few names that we recognize as explorers today that have big statues that are all being taken down. Do you know how large the country of Brazil is? Just the rainforest by itself, how massive? Do you realize how much meddling it would take from, say, Lisbon for the entire country of Brazil to speak Portuguese today? I mean, how does that even happen? You almost get into reality breakdown territory. These explorers are just the names we know. Probably 10,000 other unnamed expeditions from Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, and other places. It didn't stop once America became a country. You know, did you ever see the old movies where the U.S. cavalry, they're riding up and fighting the Indians and rounding up the Indians in the West? The ones they didn't kill ended up as assistants to people like the Lone Ranger and Yancey Derringer. We've heard so much about this sort of thing and seen so many movies and TV shows depicting their plight, it's like become normalized. It even continued after the Civil War as populations in the United States pushed west. Heck, even the end of the movie Dances with Wolves, the Sioux Indians are running for their damn lives. What else is new? To this day, most indigenous peoples and cultures are still repressed in some way. Have you ever been to a Native American reservation in the western United States before casinos were built? I have. It was one in Arizona. I can assure you all it was dust, sand, scorpions, rattlesnakes, and one rusty Pepsi vending machine that was stocked with RC Cola. Pepsi stopped servicing it. Pepsi said, fuck those people. They stocked it themselves with cheap shit. One must ask why the casinos were allowed. The Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988. What side of the spiritual tug-of-war does that friendly casino business cozy the Native American up to? But I don't understand. I thought the tribes were sovereign on their reservations, and didn't we hear it's technically not even part of the United States? Well, then the feds come in and say, well, that's true. It's your land. It's completely yours when you don't do anything important on it. You just want to carve sticks all day and drink beer? You just want to carve sticks all day? Oh, it's all yours. If you want to do something like put a casino up, we have to allow that, and then we have to regulate it. But I thought it was our land. It is if you just want to carve sticks. Wait a second. What kind of wood is that? You mean the stick I'm carving? Yeah, what kind of wood is that? That's an endangered species, boy. You're going to jail. The point's pretty easy to see if you back up a little bit. So the reservations, what do they have to corrupt themselves spiritually? They have the alcohol? Oh, yeah. The American Indian, they have the alcohol. They have the drugs? Oh, yeah. They got the prostitutes and hookers? Oh, yeah. What don't they have? What's the trifecta of corrupting spiritually? They don't have casinos and gaming. Well, give it to them. Then we really corrupt those poor bastards. Now, I'm no expert on the Australian Aborigines, but I'm told they're basically brothers from another mother to the American Indians. In many parts of Latin America, those of the darker Indian heritage in Latin America, they're considered second-class citizens to the lighter Latinos of the region, with ancestral links to Spain and Portugal. Mel Gibson makes a movie called Apocalypto, and people are shown that the old tribes were primitive, bloodthirsty people whose spiritual knowledge equated to throwing someone off a cliff as a blood sacrifice to Thulsa Doom. Because indigenous people have been endlessly persecuted, I'm certain they knew something about life's mysteries and our spiritual nature. I don't care what Mel Gibson shows in Apocalypto. This thing here with us, our adversary, doesn't like a group that carries that sort of knowledge and understanding, now does it? What else could possibly be the explanation for a repeating script that goes back a millennia? Would some idiot just say colonization, like Brazil at 10 times the size of Texas, wasn't big enough?